pretty high sympathetic.
Well, when I think about training, you always talk about these trade-offs that you're making. One of the questions I have is, can I achieve it all at once? And being more specific, I want to gain muscle mass and I want to stay super lean at the same time. And there's a school of thought that says you've got to load up and then you've got to cut. But I don't want to do that. I just want to gain muscle mass, but stay lean.
Mm-hmm.
Is that possible?
Yes.
Oh, good. Great.
Yeah. A couple things to think about here. It depends on your baseline fitness and how lean you are to start. Okay. Now you're pretty lean as it is already, and I assume you're reasonably fit. Right? Clearly you work out and stuff okay, great. It's going to be a little harder for you, right? If you're really, really unfit and you're really overweight, it's much easier to gain muscle and lose fat at the same time, right? So it's going to be challenging for you, especially you've got a number, 3 years of training. That's still kind of early in your training age, right? That's a pretty young training age. We got some newbie gains that we'll still be able to take advantage of, especially you don't have a specific plan and intention with your training. So you're kind of just, working out. All right, great. We would be able to have pretty good success with that. Physiologically, it's possible. It's never going to be 100% though. There's no way I can put, especially without exogenous testosterone, there's just no way I can put 15 pounds of muscle on you and 0 fat. That's just not going to happen. Could we put on 7 or 8 pounds of muscle and 1 pound of fat? Oh yeah, we could do that. That would not be a crazy thing. You would see that pretty consistently in the research, and certainly thousands of coaches and practitioners are oh yeah, I've seen that countless times. And so it's kind of what are the reasonable expectations there? So what I would do is for you is recommend saying, you don't have to go 40 pounds and but how much do you really want to be at? What's that number, right? We would figure that out. Maybe run analysis on you, see where you're actually at. All right, great. And then we set reasonable expectations. So you want to end up being, you want to put on 5 kilos total. Okay, tremendous. You willing to accept, 5 kilos, 4.5 kilos of muscle and maybe 1 of fat. Oh, okay, great. We get reasonable expectations. And then what you would want to do there is train consistently. You would want to be in a close to caloric, slight surplus as possible. We have to add calories to gain mass, right? But how we're going to do that is 10% surplus, something like that. So if your normal maintenance with all your exercise is 3,000 calories, I don't need you to go to 6,000 calories. That's a recipe to put on some muscle, but a lot of fat too. Now, we don't know the exact number here. There's a lot of studies going on. Actually, friends of mine, Eric Helms in New Zealand has done a handful of studies like this recently, trying to figure out what is that number? 5%, 10%, 20%. Where is the number in terms of caloric excess that you want to be on to put the most amount of lean muscle mass and the least amount of fat on? Because it's not going to be 0, right? 10 or so percent, which for you would be 10% of 3,000 would be 300 extra calories. Maybe 15%. Maybe going to 500 extra calories. We're not going to 5,000 calories. We're not making these crazy jumps in your situation there. We'd make sure protein is really, really high, at least 2 grams per kilogram, right? Something like that, maybe even higher, making sure we have enough extra on there, but we're hedging on if we're going to miss the mark, I'd rather you miss by 15% too high than 2% too low. There's just no advantage of being down there. And then we'll regulate caloric intake in terms of your calories and fat. We would play with those ratios. If you want to do a little more fat, a little less carbs, we could do that. If you want to do the opposite, we could play with that stuff. But those would be the standards we'd set.